Barry, welcome to the Predictable B2B Success Podcast. Great to have you on. Barry, you're actually a multi-award winning entrepreneur. In fact, two-time Ernst& Young Entrepreneur of the Year, celebrated author, speaker, brand strategist. You are also the author of the book, The Power of Differentiation, Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share, distributed by Simon & Schuster. And like I said, you've also won multiple other awards. I could go on for quite a while, but I'm curious, being a serial entrepreneur, I'm curious, why create LaBov, which is a renowned marketing and communications training firm? Yeah, if you could tell us a bit about that story.
I appreciate you saying that I've won a lot of awards. Awards are really not that big of a deal because there are some really terrible performers and companies that get awards. And then there are some wonderful ones that never really get the recognition they deserve. I have to say, most of the really impressive awards that have been given to me and my company were usually a surprise to me. I didn't think, oh yeah, we're going to win this thing. I didn't at all. I thought it was a pleasant thing that happened. But I started my company. I won't go into a lot of history, but I started my company accidentally, and I didn't mean to do it. It happened. I became unemployed because I was working at a place, and I suspected that they were being dishonest, unethical. And when I sat down with the person leading the company, expecting him to go, no, we're not there. He said, yeah, we're doing all that. Yeah. And I said, okay, I have to quit. And he said, you can't quit. You cannot quit because you cannot survive without me. And I went, maybe because I had my doubts. So maybe I will starve in the streets, but I don't want to be associated with somebody that's unethical. And so with that, I began a journey of entrepreneurialism that I did not expect to do.
Hmm.
I didn't expect to do it. And I have enjoyed it. It has been lucrative. But I think in part, the success that my company has seen is because we never were trying to make more money. We were never trying to 10x something. We were never trying to do that. We just thought, okay, let's do a really good job. Let's do something we're proud of and work with good people as best we can tell and see how we do. I don't have that master plan. I did it really one step at a time.
I would have thought that there were indications of your entrepreneurial streak back when you were a musician and trying to feature your band at the various venues and things of that nature.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I will say that's a great point. My entrepreneurialism actually came to the forefront accidentally again when I was a young kid, 14 years old, and then into my teens and early 20s as a rock and roll musician. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I was running a small business. I had to gather 3, 4, 5 people. I had to get them all excited to get going every time we got together. We had to create something that was interesting. We had to create then some performance or experience that somebody thought was good enough to pay us. I then had to collect the money because a lot of times those people didn't want to pay unless you really made them pay. So it was an entrepreneurial breeding ground for me to be in a band. I have to tell you, I had no idea that's what it was going to be. But what I really learned at that time was, and I still have it today, even to, I would say, a fault.
Mhm.
And that is, I look for what good somebody has in them. I look at what they can do and what they're capable of doing, as opposed to, hey, they've got to get these 15 things done. If they can't do it, they don't cut the muster, they're out of here. So I lean toward that.
Very interesting. I'm curious also, I'd love to dive into your book, but on more of a personal note, given your journey to date, what would you say is your personal area of strength?
My personal area of strength, I think there maybe are two areas. I would like to say to the audience too that I think if you looked at 100 areas, I think 80 areas I'm okay, I'm mediocre,
Mhm.
and probably 15 I'm not very good at. And then there are probably 5 that I do better than average or maybe at the top of the spectrum. So a couple of the things that I would say that I do is
Mhm.
number 1 is I am ridiculously determined. So I just, by nature, I don't give up. I don't even understand the meaning of, okay, I give up. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
I don't get that. So if I think something needs to get done and is important and is the right thing to do, I have to do it. And I do it as best I can. I also can identify strengths in
Mhm.
other people, and I appreciate them. I get criticized sometimes for identifying the strengths in other people because those other people sometimes have weaknesses that their coworkers are not happy with. And I'm
Mhm.
going, I know, but so and so's really great at blah blah blah. And I can identify and embrace the magic, the talent that somebody has. And
Mhm.
I've done that with grown-ups, but I did it when I was coaching my daughters and my sons' baseball and basketball teams. I
Mhm.
could tell, hey, this kid's really good at this. This is really great. And the parent of the kid would say, what are you talking about? I go, oh my gosh, your daughter is so great at such and such. And, the mom or dad would go, are you talking about my daughter? Because she is not good at that. And I would go, oh, she is. So I think those two things, determination and then determining, seeing, valuing, celebrating the
Mhm.
magic that somebody else has.
Brilliant. I wonder if you could elaborate on that by asking you this question. In those areas of strength, what would you say is something that businesses don't know but should?
Don't know, but should about what though?
Your
About more about,
your areas of strength, the two that you just talked about.
I think that if I understand your question, here's what I think that business misunderstood. And that is if you can identify the strengths of the people you have at your company, you have a chance to do something extraordinary. All right.
Mhm.
As opposed to forget their strengths. You hired them for X, Y, and Z. Make them do X, Y, and Z before they walk out the door every day or punch out or turn off the computer. I think the upside of individuals
Mhm.
and what they can do is extraordinary. I think related to your question, that one thing business leaders often do not understand is that a great concept, a breakthrough idea can come from anybody,
Hmm.
not just that one real highly paid creative person or that one super technology based person that gets all the glory. No, it could come from that new kid that hired in 3 months ago and said, hey, why aren't we doing such and such? So I think we have to realize great ideas can come from anyone, no matter what status or position they are in.
A great point there. I remember from our earlier conversation, you were saying that you had discovered 90% of companies fail to recognize their unique differentiators, and even more critically, that perhaps leaders believe
Yeah.
employees should simply keep their heads down rather than
Mhm.
engage with the brand's distinctiveness. I can certainly resonate to an extent with what you were saying. But I'm also curious on this point of understanding unique differentiators and encouraging employees to be part of the brand voice and tone, so to speak, from a revenue perspective. How does having this mindset impact revenue predictability?
One thing that's really important, and you mentioned, and I appreciate it because you and I talked, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months ago. It's been a long
Mm.
time. And it was a great discussion. What most business leaders, executives fall short in, if we set aside all the people issues you and I just talked about, is they are doing something that is unique, that's distinct in their business. They're doing something, or they would be out of business. Okay. Now, some of them would say, yeah, but we're not that special and blah, blah, blah. And I would argue back, okay, maybe you're not great, perfect, number one in the world, but you're doing something that is distinct. It's something that is unique to you. And most businesses, and this is from 40 years of experience, so this isn't something I just thought about the other day. Most businesses do not pay attention to what makes them unique. They're too used to it. It's old news. They don't care anymore. It's just, and if this sounds familiar in the audience, it's just us being us. It's just, quote, what we do. It's us being who we are. Okay, here's the reality. You can't think like that if you really want to do transformational growth. You can't, because you're doing not 150, 300 things. You're doing 1, 2, 3, or 4 things that are very unique. And I'm going to throw this in here, not to sound too confusing. The fact that what you're doing is unique, think of whatever it is, whoever's in the audience. I'm not saying you're superior. I'm saying you are unique. So one of the clients I've been blessed to work with is one of the greatest iconic brands in the world, which is Harley Davidson. I have not turned Harley into a success story. They were a success story when I was invited to work with them. Okay. The thing with Harley is they know, those great leaders know that what they have is special, but they do not say, hey, we have the perfect motorcycle. We have the fastest. We have the cheapest. We have the one that never breaks down. They never talk like that. They're too smart. And that's why they're iconic. What they do say is, hey, you know what? No brand has a motorcycle with a design as beautiful as we do. And you go, okay. No brand has that sound, that thunder, that Harley thunder that we do. So you recognize us a half a mile away coming up. And you go, that's true. No brand has the brotherhood and sisterhood of owners who embrace you when you buy that product and you become part of the Harley owner group. Nobody has that. And those 3 things are enough for you to say, hey, I want to own and be a rider and a participant, member of this amazing group of individuals. So it's not about being perfect or superior, but it is identifying what is authentic and characteristic about what you offer.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll try and put this in a slightly different way just to ensure that I've understood your points. At the core of it, transformational work boils down to having a mission that everyone on the team or the company believes in. And that almost in turn fosters a community that is incredibly passionate about that particular mission.
I think what you said was very good. And think about this. If nobody knows that we have that uniqueness, there is no community. There is no passion. We're just selling motorcycles to people who buy them, and I got to go sell them as cheap as I can because there's another motorcycle dealership selling different brands down the. We've got to stand up for it. And it's not fluffy, fuzzy stuff. When I talk about this stuff, it's not. It's, hey, if you don't think that whatever your brand is that important, guess what? Your customers and your employees all get that feeling from you. And then here's the question. Why should a customer buy? I don't know. And here's where it really hurts. Why should an employee care to do a good job and stay with you when he or she can walk down the street for 25 cents more an hour.
Hmm.
So we've got to give people a meaning, a purpose, a reason. And if they can feel there's a significance in what they're doing, I'm betting that the customer picks up on that. And that could be whether or not they talk to the customer and our frontline individual talking to customers, or if there's someone creating code behind the scenes with the idea that, look, I want our customers to be taken care of. I think it works no matter what.
Is there a brand, perhaps in the B2B space, that that comes to mind that has a similar effect on their community and in terms of the mission that people identify with?
I love B2B companies because the B2C companies are like, everybody gets excited. So I mentioned Harley as an example. It's, oh, they're great and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I work with a copper processing company. They had a terrible name. It was the combination of the two owners of the company. It was terrible. And they came to us and they talked about, hey, we don't even know what our customers call us because they either call us by our one owner's name or the other owner's name. And we need help. So we went out and we talked with their customers. And I said, what do you call these guys? And they said, well, it was either this one owner's name or the other owner's name. Or more likely, more often, they said to us, we call them the cheap copper guys or the cheap copper people. And I said, okay, that's how you know them. Yeah, they're the cheapies. They're the cheap ones. So we went back to the owner or to the president of the company. And I said, this is what we've learned. Let's look at what you're doing that's unique. And we learned a few things. He's a very smart individual. He shared a lot of things. He had a lot of pride. And he said, we have a product. It's the cheapest in the industry, but it's sustainable. We use recycled copper. So our team said, why would that be the cheapest product in the industry? It's sustainable. It should be maybe the premium product in the industry because a lot of companies have to go sustainable. Another thing we talked about is your name is terrible. Why don't we at least come up with a moniker or nickname? And we did. We came up with the name Copperworks because their copper works for virtually all applications. Another thing with that company was they have a great engineering team. And this team of engineers will be dispersed and dispatched nationwide to go help customers run their copper processing and wiring and tubing equipment. Okay, this all sounds maybe boring to some people, but I think it's exciting. What happens is these brilliant engineers go in and they help to fine-tune their customers' machinery. We said, okay, so think about this. You need a new name. You need to identify the fact that you are producing a sustainable product that your competitors do not. And we need to name that product, name your company, and we need to elevate your engineering group. So what happened is over a 2.5-year period of time, that company went from that terrible name to being known as Copperworks. They're the number one market share performer in their industry, and they are the premium priced product. So using them as an example, because I think B2B has a lot of unsung heroes out there, a lot of them. So I could go on and on about B2B companies because they're under the radar. You're not going to see billboards out there or TV commercials because the average person's not going to go buy, let's say, copper tubing, but they play a major role. And I also feel there are many B2B companies out there and they go, it doesn't really count for us because we're B2B, we're industrial, we're blah, blah, blah. And and we go, no, it does matter because you're dealing with humans. And if anything in B2B, you can get so much more done quicker and for less money because you have less customers. You have a smaller audience. If Apple wants to dramatically change something, they've got hundreds of millions of customers and individuals they have to communicate with on mass media. If you're producing a stainless steel tanker trailer, there's only so many people out there that are buying stainless steel tanker trailers. So you can make big progress. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in B2B. That's my favorite segment. I like B2C, but B2B is my favorite.
You make a great point there. I'm also curious, at times we've encountered companies where the employee disengagement is on the decline. What would you say, given your experiences, is perhaps the first sign that the company's employee disengagement is actually hurting their revenue potential?
I don't know if I'll say one thing. I'll give you a couple. If there's a lot of turnover, okay, that's, something's up. And it's not so much that they would say, I hate who I work for, or I hate the person. It could be the case. I'm just saying it could be what we're doing is like everybody else. It's not special. So I'll go somewhere else for a tiny bit more. That's one area. Another thing is quality. If quality control is really having a lot of trouble, you got to look at it and say, why are people not paying attention to doing the right job and doing it high quality? And many times it's because they don't think it makes a difference. What's the difference? So I was walking the line of an ambulance company, B2B, and I talked to a young person, a young guy, and I said, what do you do? And he said, I plug in wire harnesses into ambulances. I said, okay. And there are a bunch of these ambulances going down the line. I said, okay. And I said, so how's it going? He goes, I'm going to leave for 25 cents an hour more and work at a Marshmallow factory. I said, okay, so you're going to leave doing this ambulance work to go to a Marshmallow factory? He says, yeah, 25 cents more an hour. He said, I know it's not a lot, but hey, why not? I said, okay, let's think about this. Every ambulance that you are producing here at this company will last about 10 years. And each one of them will save or protect about 100,000 lives during that period of time. So that could be the driver of the truck. It could be the technicians, the EMTs. It could be the patient or the patient's families or all of them, whatever. And I said, so each one of those will save 100,000 people. And he looked at me and he said, I never thought I was in the life-saving business. Maybe he is in the life-saving business. And so he and I had a nice talk, and I know that he did not leave to go to the Marshmallow factory. What I would guess is that once he realized he was not just in the wire harness business, and he was in the life-saving business, he probably made sure those wire harnesses were plugged in, so his quality went way up. He might have even said to his fellow coworkers, hey, people, come on, make sure this is in good shape here. Come on. We're saving lives here. Okay. I think it's possible. I also think it's highly possible that he stayed at that job. So his retention and maybe the retention of a few others went up. That's how important it is for people to know that what they're doing actually has significance.
Well, that's an interesting point. And in a lot of companies, the value and the impact of the work, it really isn't verbalized, or there may be an occasional case study or win that's publicized, but the actual contribution of each person into that particular outcome really isn't talked about very much. I'm curious, so why is that? Sure, I know leaders are very busy and they've got a lot on their plate, but why is it that there isn't this thinking about how people view their work and the larger mission of what we're trying to achieve?
I think leaders are under a lot of pressure to perform in a wide range of areas. So they have the board or the ownership or the stockholders who are looking at everything, all the minutia of, are we up here? Are we down here? What's going on? I think that's a lot on the plate. I then think that the leaders are in a position where there are so many moving parts at their companies that it's very difficult to deal with making everybody happy, satisfied, whether it's the board, the ownership group, the other executives, the managers, the employees, the people who are buying your products and selling them for you, the customers. I think they're overwhelmed. And I believe that many leaders that I have known, and I've known hundreds and hundreds of leaders, I think by far most of them are really good people. I've known very few leaders that I thought were actually evil people, very few. But I think what we have to realize is, and it's not common to hear this, they are human beings. These leaders are not machines. They're not objects. They're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Once in a while, they make a mistake. And you know what? Once in a while, they're overwhelmed. So what happens is they get so inundated with every goal, every expectation, that a lot of times they turn almost into politicians where they're just trying to please whoever is the audience in front of them at the moment. So it's very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
That's why quite often my company has the opportunity to deal with the leaders, and we can be very good confidants to the leader. And in many cases, giving them support that maybe they don't get from anybody else. When you're a leader, it's very common to get no positive feedback because people think you don't need it. So you might be, Vinny, you might be the greatest leader, and it might be shocking when one of the people who work for you say, you know what, I really appreciate you did this. And you might go, wow. That might happen once every 3, 4, 5 months if you're leading a company. And a lot of people don't understand that. They objectify. They think the leader is an object. So that's what happens. The vast majority of leaders today are really in touch with the fact that their people need guidance. Their people need to feel inspired. They get it. 20 years ago, when my company was speaking to these great people and saying, hey, you know what we need to do is identify your differentiation. And then once we do that, the very first thing we do after that is we celebrate it with your people, your employees. 20, 30 years ago, the average leader said, hey, I'm not going to waste time doing that. I'm not going to shut down the facility. They're getting paid $5 an hour or whatever. I need them to work. Today, I don't have leaders saying that to me at all. They're going, you know what? I love that you said that. I love that you said we need to get our people all on the same page and feeling the pride. So it's a new day, and it's easy to vilify a leader because he or she's supposedly making a lot of money and drives a nice car. But the reality is they're under a lot of pressure and they're human.
Would you say that lack of perspective also perhaps affects customers? And perhaps just to think of a specific scenario, I'm thinking of technology implementation or in a company where there is technology being implemented without really considering the user experience and how it affects customers. I'm sure you would agree with the fact that having a good user experience is vital to not just keeping customers for the long term, but also as a revenue predictability factor as well. And I'm curious, as you speak to companies, is there a framework that you would use to help companies evaluate whether technology investment will enhance or hinder revenue growth?
In my book, I talk about this, and what I say is that it may not be popular, that technology should be implemented to make it easier and more attractive for the customer to purchase your product and experience your product, not for you and or your people to do things quicker and easier at the expense of the customer experience.
Mhm.
The thing we have to understand when we talk about user experience, it's customer experience.
Mm.
Okay. So what we have to realize is, and this is really powerful, the customer does not distinguish the difference between the user experience, let's say,
Mhm.
and the brand. So if I go on to your site and you're a B2B company and it is horrible to
Mm.
deal with getting something figured out, getting some progress, getting something, and I'm trying to maybe talk to somebody or I'm trying to learn things, if I am very frustrated, I get off that
Mm.
site and I don't say, I love that brand and product, but I hate the site. I go, I'll never buy that brand again because we look at that experience very simplistically. And it goes not just in B2B, it can go into B2C. If you go to a motorcycle dealership, a car dealership, a boat dealership, whatever it is, and you go in and it is a terrible experience, you don't walk out and say, "Oh, I want to buy that boat brand somewhere else, but not here." You go, "I'll never buy that boat brand." So that's how important it is. We have
Mm.
to look at the reason we're doing this should be to make it easier for the customer to perform, to purchase, and to enjoy.
I'm thinking, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of what you're saying, but also thinking of the employee's perspective of what if we
Mhm,
use this particular tool, it would certainly
mhm,
make my job a lot easier. Now,
correct.
that may be in an internal department, say accounting or operations or something of that
Right.
nature. There may not be a direct correlation to the overall customer experience, but in the use of that particular tool or that particular process. But would it be fair to say that in making your employees' life easier, you should be able to significantly measure the increase in happiness or ease of work, if I can use that rather broad phrase,
Mhm,
that
right.
impacts the overall attitude of an employee as they interact with others within the organization, as well as with customers in other aspects, and therefore
I think
make
it's
a
possible.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's possible if that employee is given something meaningful to do in the place of doing these other, let's say, meaningless
Mhm.
activities, because now we've automated it, we've made it more technological. I think that could be great. I think that the employee in these situations must feel that what they're doing requires them
Mm.
as opposed to something,
Mhm.
an AI, machine learning, quantum computing. If it's something where it's like they get to use their minds, they
Mhm.
get to connect with somebody. And because of this technology, the low hanging fruit that they were bored with, they don't have to do. They can actually engage their brains. Then I think that's a great idea.
Mhm. But when it comes to identifying differentiators in the earlier part of our conversation, you suggested asking questions to unpack the company's differentiators, their processes, etc. I wonder if if you could unpack this a bit more and maybe even share a framework or set of principles that you might use to help companies identify their differentiators, which to them might oftentimes seem rather common and a matter of fact, as opposed to how the world might view it if they were to know about it.
Yeah, we have a 5-step approach.
Mhm.
One step, nobody that I know of in the world, I know you're in Australia, I don't know anybody in the world that does one of these 5 steps, and I know that a couple of these steps everybody does, so I'll share. First step is we do what's known as a brand assessment, and if we wanna get really simple here, it's talking to humans and
Mhm.
listening. So we wanna know what is it that your B2B company or whatever is doing that they should not change? What are they doing that you love? Now, you might be the employee, the executive, you could be a customer, you could be a supplier, a dealer. We want to know, are they doing anything that you do not want them to change because you love it?
Hmm.
And that's critical because so often what happens is entrepreneurial leaders are willing to change anything, and they will go off and change the one or two great things they're doing. And they think they're doing it for the right reason, but it turns out years later, people go, you used to do such and such, and that's when you were at your best. And it was like, oh. So number one, we learn what they're doing at their best. And of course, we learn what people, humans, think they need to change. We then go into their facility, either virtually or in person, and we look at their technology. We look at, if it's an industrial company, we look at their machinery, their metallurgy, their processes. If it's more of a service-based or technology company, we look at their technology. We determine, and this is the step nobody does, we get in there and determine what could be a unique differentiator, something that's you can start talking about and bragging about. So we go in, that's our second step. Our third step is we then do a jam session, kind of like a rock and roll band, because that's my background, but a jam session. And we will then work with our client and go back and forth on, could this be a differentiator? What about this? What about that? And we come together as a team with our clients. And this is what you can do internally as to, okay, here are 3 or 4 differentiators. Here are the kinds of things we should do to really promote them. We then go to the fourth step, which is a common step, which is execution of materials, of creativity. So that could be, gee, we need a new website, or we need to add to our website, or we need to have a new name for this product that we never called a name to before. We need to create a name. We need to have a logo. Whatever it is, we get it all ready. And then the fifth step is the launch of this brand, this concept, and its differentiation. But the most important thing we do in that fifth step is we start off celebrating it with the most important people, your team. Not just telling them, not just saying, hey, by the way, we're going to be promoting blah, blah, blah. I just want to let you know. No, you huddle people together. You stop production and you go, everybody, this is really incredible. This is a historic day. And we want you to be here. You're part of it. You're the reason we're doing what we're doing. We're celebrating this. We're going to share everything with you. Then once that happens, these individuals become soldiers in the army to battle to help you win, okay? Yes, then after that, sure, we get out to the distributors, could be dealers, could be, of course, and suppliers and customers. That's how we do it. And it's very logical, and it's very emotional and inspiring.
Let me see if I could unpack at least certain elements of this. The second point you made about going to the company and trying to identify something about their processes, etc., that is unique. In highly competitive spaces, almost like a red ocean type environment, say CRMs, how would we go about finding our unique differentiators when, from many customers' point of view, it's just another CRM that I need to make sure integrates with all the rest of my tech stack?
There's got to be something in there. There has to be. It could be the way the user interfaces with it. It could be a slight difference in the technology. There's got to be something in there. We can't just say we're selling something that everybody else has, because then we have to say, why are we in business? Is it that we're the cheapest? Okay, if we're the cheapest and that's our differentiator, okay. But then we have to watch out, because we could become a commodity. And if we're just a commodity, you can't get cheap enough to win in the commodity business. And that company I mentioned a few minutes ago, that was the copper processing company, they were viewed as a commodity. And they had to fight that commodity monster, as we call it. You got to fight it. Because if you are just another, you're a local such and such, if you're one of a number that do blah, you're a commodity. And I'll tell you what, when you start to identify those 1 or 2 things that you do that are different, you can charge a premium. It's the opposite of being a commodity. With my company, when I talk to potential clients, I say, look, we focus on one thing, differentiation. If you think you have differentiated your brand, your product, and you don't need any help there, we are of no value. We have no value because we'll be like everybody else and we're not going to do that. And once in a while they go, yeah, I have it all figured out and I know exactly what makes us unique. And they tell us, and sometimes they're on track and sometimes they're basically saying, hey, we're the best because we're the best. And I go, that's not a differentiator. That's a brag. You might be the best, but you're just bragging. So we have to stand up, because if we don't stand up and say, this is what we do that is unique, we are merely a commodity in the eyes of the customer. And by the way, the employees, they're going, yeah, we're just the same as everybody else.
What you say is really vital, especially in this day and age where the cost to create a startup, especially in the SaaS space, is being reduced to almost zero, given the way AI is evolving. So this idea of being able to differentiate and value your people, especially in terms of the process and the deliverables that they contribute towards, I guess is the way to stand out in what's becoming increasingly commoditized kind of marketplace.
I agree with you. I think if we look at AI, which has a lot of power behind it, of course, if we don't identify what we are doing that's distinct, hopefully a bit human, then why not just do all AI? Why not? Right? Let's just go do AI. And we have to watch that. And that doesn't mean AI is bad. AI can play a great role. But it does get down to the point where we go, okay, now wait a minute. What is it that we're doing that has any value? Because otherwise we are just same old, anybody can get us anywhere else. And I'll tell you, that's something that we should all be very concerned about.
The other question I want to ask you was, with discovering new points or new differentiators, how do you help a company quantify the revenue impact of these differentiators?
Okay, great question. I think it's really hard to quantify it, to get down to the penny. But let's put it this way. If you were a technology company 30 years ago and you built computers and maybe MP3 players and you had a couple of factories, your value, and this is, I think, pretty impactful, your value would be whatever the cost of, or let's say, whatever the assets that you have, your factory, your equipment, all of that, plus some value for the sales that you've had, because the assumption would be you're going to have more sales. Okay. And that's what you have. Period. That's it. Now, if you differentiated yourself and you were a computer company that also created MP3 players, but you named your products, so you had an iPhone, you had a Mac, you had et cetera, you go down the whole list, all of a sudden an iPod, all of a sudden now the value of that uniqueness, those interesting products, because an iPod was or is an MP3 player. That's all it is. But it's unique. It's got some interesting characteristics. If Apple just said it's the Apple MP3, their value is lower. So if you quantified the value of the Apple MP3, it's who cares? But it's not. It's the Apple iPod. And we have to realize that applies to all of us. That's why my process is called brand re-engineering, the thing I just shared with you, Vinny. If I just said, oh, it's just, the LaBov team doing branding, it's us being us, it's okay. No, it's brand re-engineering. We're not trying to create your brand. We're discovering your brand and re-engineering the way you are positioning it. And that's the value. So there is great value. We have worked with companies that have hired us, and then after we did our work, they sold their business for much more because they had named their products, they had positioned themselves in their uniqueness and their differentiation, and it translated to more money in their pockets. Deservedly, by the way. They didn't take advantage of anybody. They were smart and said, wait a minute, we're doing a couple things great. Let's name these things and let's promote these things.
As part of this whole process that you've described, would perhaps an outcome be identifying a chief evangelist of the brand or the company, or maybe even a series of a number of evangelists within the organization to help convey that brand message and the brand message?
I think it'd be great for every company to have a chief evangelist.
Mm-hmm.
What I want is I want a bunch of evangelists out there that love what I'm doing. I want everybody part of my army or my church or whatever we want to call it. But I want to have a mission and a uniqueness and a purpose that people go, hey, this is cool. I get it. And it doesn't have to be that, hey, we're going to do something that will completely change the world totally. It doesn't have to be that grandiose. But it also cannot be at the opposite end of the spectrum, which is we're working, we're getting our job done, and we're picking up a paycheck. It's not going to work anymore. 50 million Americans quit their jobs during 1 year of COVID. I think it was 2021. I think it was, okay. And when I was writing my book, and the book was called The Power of Differentiation, and that's what we ended up naming it, but all of a sudden it hit me that it's not just about differentiating your product so that you can sell more and sell at a premium. If you have 50 million people quitting their companies, we need to also differentiate that brand for the people working at your company, because they're going to be some of the 50 million that walk off the job. And I don't want that to happen. So that's how important it is. I think we need a lot of evangelists, a lot of ambassadors out there, a lot of cheerleaders going, let's do it.
Are there specific metrics that you use to measure the success of differentiation strategies?
Great question. There are. When we worked with a particular manufacturing company, the turnover that they had at their distributorships, so those were the companies selling their products, the turnover was over 150%. Now, some people in the audience would say that's not possible. You can't have over 100. Yes, you can. You can have one position turning over 3 or 4 times a year. So you go, oh. So one thing we said is once we continue this process with you and we move down the road in differentiation, we want to see a dramatic reduction in that. We want to see dramatic retention. So what happened was, and this is fascinating, I'm just giving you one example.
Sure.
Turnover had been 150% at the distributorships. Once we changed the approach and we emphasized the uniqueness, the differentiation of this brand, here's where it got really interesting. The turnover at dealerships went down to 40%. Now you might say, oh, that's still way high. It's high. However, 50% of those people that did leave went to a dealership or distributorship that sold that brand. So what I am saying is, if manufacturer X and their distributors had 150% turnover, then it went down to 40. Here's where it's interesting. Those individuals that left, half the time they went to another manufacturing distribution company that represented manufacturer X. So what I'm saying is they stayed with the brand. So that is one thing. The retention is critical. The quality control has to go up. If quality goes up, there's a reason that people are making sure things are working and they actually make sense to people. So I think that's very good. Customer satisfaction must go up. If customers are not feeling that the employee or the distributor dealer person cares, they're going to walk off. And then, of course, repeat sales. So if I buy the brand one time, do I come back and buy again, or do I just buy once? These are a number of them. Another one is pricing and profit. Your pricing should go up. If your pricing does not go up, and if you do not become the premium brand, there's a problem, because you must not have differentiated enough that somebody was willing to pay a penny or a dollar or $10,000 more. So there are a number of KPIs.
This has been very insightful. To start wrapping things up, Barry, in the space of differentiation, are there perhaps a couple of areas that you find tends to get overlooked or doesn't get much airtime? If so, what would they be?
Perfection. I think perfection is misunderstood. Too many companies in the B2B space are trying to be perfect. They want to make sure what they're putting together is perfect. They want everything perfect. They're not going to move unless it's perfect. And they don't understand, in the music world, what is known as a mistake. When somebody puts their hands on the guitar in the wrong way or plays something on the keyboard the wrong way, many of the times that has happened, that turns into a hit song because it's a little different. It's a little quirky. So what I'm saying is perfection is an enemy. So you have to get rid of that. The final thing I will say is words are very important. So there are, in the English language alone, 200,000 words. Yet, too many of us are running companies where we claim the same 5, 6, 7, or 8 words: service, selection, quality, blah, 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 right? We have to look at what words are we using for our company, our brand, and they should be unique. I work with a company, and they're a truck company, truck manufacturer, B2B. And instead of saying, hey, we're really rugged and we really have high quality product, they said, we have rigor. And I said, rigor, R-I-G-O-R, rigor. I thought, wow, that's a unique word. And rigor would mean, hey, we're going to work hard to make sure this thing is durable. We're not going to give up on this thing. You know what? They own that word in their marketplace. Their competitors don't say anything about rigor. All right. It's so much better to say, look, nobody provides rigor. Nobody manufactures rigor like us. And we have to look at the words that we use to describe us as being sacred instead of generic. So those are a couple things, Vic.
Brilliant. Just on that train of thought, I'm just thinking to the future as companies try to prepare for future differentiation challenges. With the example that you just mentioned of the trucking company who owns the word rigor in their space, is that almost like a value? And
yes,
it's something that they would want to hang on to even in the future, as opposed to look to pivot down the track. Should technology
that is the value of it.
Yeah.
That's when we were talking to them, that was one of their core values, which was rigor. And I'm going, oh my gosh. But it's so easy to go, forget rigor, just say quality. And it's okay, but everybody says quality. And one of the problems with words like quality, well, there's high quality, there's premium quality, there's entry-level quality. Quality doesn't mean quality. It's just a word. It's useless. But rigor, as an example. So again, that's why my company, differentiation, is 6 syllables, 15 letters. A lot of people cannot pronounce it. Okay, but we own it. That's ours. Nobody can take it. And if somebody says, I want to do differentiation, they're going, oh, you mean like LaBov? And that's what we own.
Right.
And that's what I want everybody in the audience to look at. What can you own? What can you claim? And not 1,000 things, 1, 2, or 3 things that you do differently, and name them. Give them a personality. We don't call our kids child 1, 2, and 3. We have names. We tell people why we named them that. Look at the 1, 2, or 3 different differentiators you have. Name them. Give them a personality. Look at what you offer and pay attention to the words you use.
For those who are listening in or watching and would like to find out more or connect with you, where would you recommend they head to?
they can go to LinkedIn and look me up, Barry LaBov. I will respond. I get inquiries every single day and I respond. Go to my website, barrylabov.com. You can see the podcast that I'm on. I have a podcast that I run, which is called Difference Talks, which is all about differentiation. You can go to my company's website, LaBov.com. And my book, The Power of Differentiation, is found worldwide. You can go to Amazon or any Simon & Schuster outlet. And if you do buy the book, I thank you. And please leave an honest review. I think it'd be great.
Brilliant. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Barry, thank you so much for doing this. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor.